Dear viewers and participants, talk to each other using all the opportunities of this conference, Startup Village. Write to your potential partner or investor and set up a meeting. It's very easy to do so. In the participant section, adjust the necessary categories using filters. Find a participant from the list and start talking to them. But you need to make sure you marked the box want to talk to other participants, but if you don't want to talk to anybody, remove that mark from there. And continue interaction via chats and networking sections where various formats offered, topical chats, general chats, and others to discuss ideas, projects, and to establish helpful contacts. You can also send messages to speakers with a Ask Question button. Don't forget to share your opinion and evaluate speeches. But we gradually move to the next session, Ecosystems, Global Tech Trend, one of the most fashionable world in digital economy. They can be opened or closed. They can be equal partnerships or they can be built around a leader. They're created to improve client services and help develop businesses of participating companies. But how they are developed? Their tech solutions and processes are under the hood. What companies use to ensure reliable and effective operation for their partners? Some of those things are behind the scenes, but we will discuss all those secrets under the hood of ecosystems, how they really work, and how to make it there. Good afternoon. I think we're online because I see myself on the screen. Our panel today is about ecosystems, and I would like to introduce our speakers. Sergey Bezbogov, Head of Department, Senior Vice President at VTB Bank. Alexander Ivazov, he'll be online with us. He's VP of Business Development at Rostelecom. Vladimir Bansky, Pochta Tech CEO, Andrei Burilov, Member of Board, Chief Information Officer at Moscow Exchange, and Alexander Sagun, Geekbrains Executive Director. My name is Ekaterina Kinakina. I am Chief Editor-in-Chief of Inc. Russia, which is a franchise of an American publication about entrepreneurs and all the good things that we can do here. I think this is what Startup Village is all about today. We'll be talking about ecosystems and that approach, and I would like to start with a general question. We know that ecosystems are developed by many companies, Sberbank, Yandex. They all want to do more than just develop their business. So do you think that's because companies reached some ceiling in their respective businesses that they initially started. Or maybe that's because companies cannot satisfy the demand with their own offer. And what is an ecosystem today, generally speaking, today in May of 2021? So it's a universal range of services offered by a company, or perhaps a company brings together services and businesses, and thanks to that cumulative effect, provide a boost to new businesses, to new ideas and technologies. So I have the microphone right at hand, so I will start. This is how I perceive an ecosystem. It is a trend in recent years, and it can be viewed from two sides. It's pure business from one perspective, and the question was about that by our moderator, but it's also a client story. If you look at it from the business side, at some point, some market segments pick their audience and they use it to the maximum, and adding more clients becomes more and more expensive. But value per person should grow and business should expand because it is required by investors, shareholders, etc. So it's about horizontal integration of businesses. This is how ecosystems are based. Because you have a large client base, so you provide additional services to them, you expand because of that. On the other hand, you have user experience. And I think all of us are users of some ecosystems. I use a couple of ecosystems at least. Yandex and Mail.ru, their services. Being a person, not necessarily an entrepreneur, it's about convenience of service, trust, etc. So for a lot of people, for a lot of consumers, that client experience provides new opportunities, and it's about trust. But for businesses, a new step in scaling up their business and achieving new results and expanding and reaching new markets. So, colleagues? In fact, I agree with this. It's about new opportunities. Ecosystems provide new opportunities. Originally, this word, ecosystem, came from biology, and it was defined by three things: area, vegetation, and animal life on the area, and then interconnections between them, those who share, exchange information and energy between themselves. Basically, in nature, in an ecosystem, those subjects cannot live without each other. And same thing in our business environment. If we talk about the business of an ecosystem, that means that if we talk about financial institutions, I represent one. So we cannot live without our clients. They are different, our clients are. And at some point in time, we need to establish closer ties with them, besides the things that we already do on a daily basis. And here's what I have in mind here. Our financial market has been divided, and client flows happen very slowly. So we as users of financial services, we change our banks when there is additional value elsewhere. If that value is there, we will go there. If there is no value in it, we stay where we are, because change in banks or switching, there's a barrier to do that. And in the recent years, the financial sector, especially in the retail sector, developed a lot, and coming up with something new and some breakthroughs became very difficult. So that's why a natural development was entering non-financial services, additional services because banks do provide to their partners various services, and they do not necessarily advertise them, but they get additional clients as a result. I think that's the idea, that expansion that tech companies and financial institutions do. And we will hear from them as well. So they're trying to attract additional clients, so that's what it's all about. I would like to share as well my opinion. Some time ago, I came up with this formula. It's very simple. Ecosystem is when 1 + 1 = 3. If you put next to each other several services, and with additional value if there's no additional value at the interface of those services, neither for the client or for the organization, it's not an ecosystem, even though sometimes they call them that. But when for the client they create additional value, so one product becomes more valuable or more complementary, or that creates an opportunity to use resources, platform, reduce costs, which will be beneficial for the client sooner or later. So as Sergey called it horizontal links between elements. So they create additional value. And then at that point, an ecosystem is created. And we talk about them at a macro level with multiple services. And in our experience, ecosystems can be at a lower level in specific segments or for specific consumer client segments. And that is also an ecosystem. And as we discuss it, I will provide some examples, including our own. I represent an alternative vision of an ecosystem because at the Moscow Exchange we develop a financial marketplace. So it's not bringing all the services focused on a client, talking about client's path, user path. We develop a different model. If there's a need, if a financial product is needed, you can get it the best way possible without going to the office. Whether you need to get a loan or a deposit or insurance, you don't need to think of which bank to contact. You go to the marketplace. You come to the financial marketplace with those products. So that's a model with the idea of providing the best experience for clients and using the technologies that we have developed as part of our classical model to providing access and services to our traditional clients. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Alexander Ivazov. I am speaking remotely, and I'm the last one to answer this question. I think the beauty of this approach with ecosystems, we don't have those who are right or those who are wrong here. In any case, it can be, we can add to each other's understanding and enrich each other. But I think one of the key drivers in the development of ecosystems in our digital world is that when we talk about digitalization of industries, of segments of economy, IT is such a thing that when it joins any business, then borders disappear. It's not as important anymore which competencies in business you have, because you can buy them, you can develop them fairly quickly, but integration function becomes important, and compatibility of IT systems becomes important. That's one of the drivers for the development of ecosystems. Speaking of ecosystems, I agree on many points that my colleagues mentioned. We differentiate two types of ecosystems. The first type is a marketplace type of systems when the focus is on the client and you have horizontal expansion in terms of number of services to have LTV or RQ per user, per individual. And the dominant partnership model is dominating here. And such ecosystems are effective when we talk about great numbers of users, when we talk about large markets, and when companies who develop such ecosystems are ready to do it, are ready to invest a lot and in the long term in those ecosystems. So like any operational system, iOS, Android, it can be Sberbank system or Yandex system. VTB is preparing for such a launch, from what I know. So that's one class of ecosystem. Another type of ecosystem is when they're product-centered. You have an integrated product or integrated products, tech products as usual, and you can get more RQ per client. So you get online solution. That ecosystem is more technological. So it's like a global bus that helps to seamlessly move from one ecosystem or within one large product to go from one service to another. And client does not even see that basically they change suppliers, vendors in companies. So we see those two approaches, and if we talk about orientation, client orientation of those systems, so for business purposes, the greatest demand is for vertical integration. When you have a deep product with multiple levels, with B2C market, there's greater demand for a marketplace system. When the user has a broad range of options, because businesses oftentimes have clear budget and timing and deadlines. So basically, those two approaches to the development of ecosystem is what this is what we are working on in our company. Thank you. Having heard the speakers, this is what I heard. I got the impression, and perhaps many consumers and users of ecosystems get this impression, to build an ecosystem, you need to place some financial business at the center, whether maybe a bank or financial institution. So do you think that only a major financial institution can do that, can build an ecosystem, or depends on the financial capacities of a company? So it doesn't have to be a financial company. I'm interested in this. So which ecosystem will win? The one that will offer a full range of products so that a client will not need to go anywhere, so they can get everything in one place, or ecosystems will win those who have unique products, unique offer that others will not have, their competitors, because we have consumer ecosystems that have been built following this principle of universal, identical set of services offered to the client. So these are two questions that I wanted to hear answers to, what you think about it. So I would like to start, because I do not represent a financial institution. Can you put my slides on? I have one slide there. Okay, I need to. So how the Post of Russia perceives this? We have a large scale of our retail clients, corporate clients, lots of contacts. So many things can be said here, because large organizations would like to do something and then call it an ecosystem. But we decided for ourselves that we want to generate income from our core business. So we don't want to get 50% of income from that ecosystem, but we want to provide to our clients a wide range of services, but generate income from our core business, communications, deliveries, etc. And we also have major, very large infrastructure, which is an asset for us, being both online and offline company. At the same time, we have Pochta Bank, so which is a financial core for us, and we discussed thinking about this. So what should be the basis for building this? And we decided to build it around the client, but by segments. So those segments may be very different. So, like pensioners can be one segment, or maybe sellers, those who sell things in the internet. So this is similar to that vertical integration that my colleague mentioned. So customer journey of those clients is what we track, what kind of barriers they face, and what kind of solutions can be offered to deal with that. Understandably, we don't want to earn on financial services provided by banks or startups which are being introduced. But our clients want to sell in the country and around the globe, and financial services are needed, but our core business is logistics, delivery, and storage. So we wanted to focus that ecosystem not on a product, not on financial services, but on those segments, and work with those gaps. And of course, the scale, the scope of resources is important, because you can either cover the whole area, or you can focus on specific areas and provide and make a value offer to make it more comfortable, to improve lives of people, or help them be more effective, productive. So my answer is more like, it's not just about financial institutions. But when we talk about leverage and financial investments, we have those resources. But multiple approaches, different approaches can be used, and who will be winning? I don't think that's the right question to ask. I think the client should be the winner, because this competition should be beneficial for the client. And they can switch between different ecosystems. Being an individual, it's not a problem for me to use Yandex Delivery to order food, or use a Kuchnia na Rayonie, other delivery service, because it kind of depends on what I want to order right now. But those are different ecosystems. I can use either service. So, and I use both, and they also want, improve their quality. So it's really about clients.
I'm the second representative of non-financial sector here, and our university, Geekbrains, is a part of ecosystem. It starts satellites around Mail.ru, not one of the main players, of course. Of course, there are technological companies with a great financial shoulder, and they can help to gather out the companies on the level of startup. And the companies are showing some results in their business plan, and they are becoming the full-fledged business units of these business units. Mail.ru has 16 of those, and our university, online university, is one of those. From this point, ecosystem gives advantage for the project, and it helps the client who is using the services of those projects. So this is basically the internal benefits which we receive. This is basically the economy on procurement for traffic, because everything is done in a consolidated manner, because there is a whole group that does it consolidated, and there are discounts from the platform as well. And I think that Mail.ru doesn't have this end-to-end identity, which helps you feel that you are located in one and the same system, whatever project it is. So we are also communicating with universities, although we're in Mail.ru, and sometimes they are asking to implement their system in our educational platform. The big companies which have corporate universities are asking to involve and to have their corporate universities introduced to our system. And basically, we are working with, for example, VTB Bank. They want to study more than digital professions, and instead of simply just coming up with something, it's better for you to integrate. So it's not becoming something else. It's finding the junction point between various systems. And as Sergey said, it's just like the nature, every ecosystem, forest or field, all of those have their own preferences and their field of existence, and between each other they are connecting as well, and this is one of the examples. So this is not about financial institutes only. So in the very middle there has to be a player with some financial shoulder which can aggregate all of this. I do agree that looking for winner among the ecosystems would be wrong. You need to look at the client. This is the client who has to be the winner. He has to win it all. And the client is going to help you to evaluate which ecosystem is going to be the best. If we're talking about the services, they are easily replicated. So it's all about replicating and using those. Of course, the niche products and the elements of the marketplaces, they can exist as well. Which model will win? So it's a question. Everything is going to go on and on. The systems are going to work together, and in the end, the client is going to receive seamless client route, and he will receive the service which was desired and which is deserved. This technological shoulder is very important, but we can see startups from the garage, and they are implemented in the ecosystem and marketplaces, and this allows for spending small money to provide the service to the client. Well, the simplest thing is when you have a lot of money and the ecosystem is built, and the fantasy of the startup is so good that we should look at the partnerships which are going to provide the service, first of all. Maybe Alexander would like to say a couple of words for him not to be the last one. Thank you, Sergey. I'm okay with being the last. But anyhow, dear colleagues, I have two answers here. Answer number one, from the point of view of financial power. We need to admit that any ecosystem, if it is large-scale ecosystem, so whether it's B2B, it's vertical integrated products, or it's B2C, wide horizon, like App Store, Super App, and so on, it's a demand of spending dozens of billions of rubles. I don't know whether it's big or small amounts, but anyhow, for most of the companies, this is quite a big chunk of the income of the companies. That is why the answer is, in order to build a system, we need to have an opportunity and capability, I don't know, 7 years plus, to invest step by step into the ecosystem. Speaking of financial and non-financial institutes, it's not really important whether it's financial or non-financial. The important thing is, when you are building the system which is working for B2C market and you want to monetize your user, and let's think about it. We are monetizing the attention of the user only. So let's say why the banking organizations or financial organizations are a great platform to build any consumer ecosystem. The so-called engagement of the user, the amount of contacts of the user with the service of the organization, whether it's banking app or it's web app, we can see high frequency. The attention of the user is focused on this core, and another good example of developing of the ecosystems is online cinemas, Netflix, Vink from Rostelecom, and so on. Why is it good? The client is spending his or her time to consume this service, and it consumes a lot of time. Thus, if you are implementing various technologies, whether it's online cinema or it's banking app or it's super app, Yandex or Mail.ru app, You are using various technologies which are helping to sell more services to the clients, and in the end, you receive more income, and you're asking the client to pay something for that. I wouldn't limit this whole situation to the financial organizations only. First of all, there has to be a core which helps to provide cooperation with the client, because the time of the client is the money for the ecosystem. Yes, there's not much to add after well-esteemed colleagues, but I would like to look at it all from another angle, because we looked at ecosystems while we were concentrating on ourselves. I do understand why the question was about the financial institute in the core of it. We have one financial institute which has been promoting ecosystems for quite some time right now, and they are creating it this way or another. But indeed, it shouldn't be a financial institute like a must. If we take a look at another model, when an ecosystem is not created through acquisition of something which lies in a good or bad manner, but it's all about establishing the relations with the partners who can add value for bilateral cooperation. And in the end, by joining in this partnership, we are forming two ecosystems. So let's not go far. VTB has a very deep partnership with Magnet. We are developing rather good and interesting products, and Magnet would like to receive better financial services, and everything is seamless and you cannot see it. It's a great opportunity. We are ready to work with them, just like with the other retailers. However, in fact, on one hand, VTB includes the ecosystem of Magnet in their zone. On the other hand, Magnet is complementing its ecosystems with financial services. Magnet has its own ecosystem, so we're talking about logistics, suppliers, warehouses, distribution centers, and so on and so forth. And they are adding the financial service, whatever the financial organization is. And I would like to agree with Alexander. The contact with the client has to be established, then the system is growing. So we're not talking about physicians only, and about the physicists. The client's relations, the B2B relations, and the client system through B2B with equal rights, this is what our future is all about. This is to answer the question about the financial organization. If we're talking about the uniqueness of the products, I agree that uniqueness is a very complicated thing. So we are totally informed, and all of our products, almost all of them, are digital. As soon as we receive a new product, it will take a week up until several months, and the whole market is going to sell these products, especially if it's successful. And if it goes forward, and it attracts clients. And that's it. After that, several weeks after that, this innovation is not an innovation anymore. And of course, in the background, the situation is as follows. The organization has to be competitive, and it has to know how to react to what it has come up with itself. And second, the processes which are working have to be efficient, because we are fighting for efficiency in general. The cheaper the service, the faster the victory is, because the services for our clients are pretty much the same. Thank you. I really like your approach and the idea that the ecosystem should not be built around financial institution, and it can be rather flexible. But let's come up with a model. Magnet has its own ecosystem, and it's supposed to work on masses. But let's say there is a small regional producer, manufacturer of milk. Will it be able to join into the system? It won't be able to satisfy the demands of all the magnets, and I'm really not sure that Magnet is going to be interested in such a partnership. If we go outside the thinking that the ecosystem is only B2C or something product-based, and we look at the ecosystem in general, what do you think? How flexible is ecosystem if we are including some custom local products? And are the ecosystems ready to include such products? If I may do something regional, something small, will I be interesting for ecosystem, or is ecosystem filtering things which cannot be scaled up on the level of the whole ecosystem? Well, to answer your question, I cannot answer for Magnus, of course. I think it's a business answer. If we take a look at the ecosystem and how it's built, and if we're talking about the inclusion of additional services, what is called the core product, core business, which is used to build the ecosystem around. So there is always a question: can it be scaled? Second, is it sensible? Because the big ecosystems have big choices. If they understand that they cannot use it and introduce it in their system, if they see the value, or let's say they are not receiving the value from the point of view of business. And if it's a small player, a regional one, I think it's more about the startup, which has to go through the stage of a startup to create this model which can be multiplied and scaled up and introduced into the ecosystem. If we take a look at B2B ecosystems, they are trying to integrate themselves from the point of view of IT. Digitalization is impossible in an analog view. And if this producer, manufacturer cannot support this interface, this is going to be very complicated for him. And that is why only the players which can be provided through digital channels are viewed from the point of view of B2B ecosystems. It's all about the question from the business. It's always B2B game for the ecosystem. Okay, let me share an idea. Of course, I do not want to start going deep into terminology, but sometimes we are mixing up the notions of marketplace and ecosystem. Marketplace is a solution which is aiming at using the sets of various providers of solutions, which are going to be standardized, and they're going to connect to the marketplace after that. So whether it's B2C, B2B, or whatever. So in B2C is all about this synergy, and if the company is big and it's tried, and there won't be a synergy, it's gonna be really conditional, so in the format of business or some added value which appears. That is why I think these are two different tasks. And if we are talking about ecosystems, it's more of a rejection of small startups, or something which can potentially put in a backlog to create additional value later. So, and the providers have to go through the marketplaces, and I wouldn't put them all together in one place. So I think these are the different things. Indeed, we shouldn't mix up the notions because magnet. Well, I think that this road has been walked by the retailers. There is a global product, there is a local product, and this is just the same thing. So whether it's marketplace or ecosystem, if we're talking about IT, let's say a small startup came up with a quality product, and the question is about scaling it. So, and we need to help somehow to work with this volume. So no limitations here. The small startup which created a button, but this button can be pushed by millions. If we're talking about local products, I think it already exists. Alexander, would you want to? Yes, I'm ready. Thank you, Sergey. I think Ekaterina touched upon one of the prisms, the lenses of what is actually called the ecosystem, but I think that it's more about the value chain here and now. So it's the food chain of delivering any products. In this regard, we can say that any supermarket is an ecosystem. No, I'm not talking about magnets only. Magnets is a model. We can talk about the bikes for rent in the hall. Okay, yes, anyhow, business has its own elements. It has spare parts, it has logistics if you are delivering the spare parts, bank which is giving loan, the place where you sell it, and so on and so forth. The idea is that any part of the chain of this added value could be called the value chain, that it's a value, that it's an ecosystem. Because when you are connecting various organizations together, when we add services and products to create the value for the customer, we need to understand that the ecosystem is doing the same thing. Any magnets or any other supermarket which accumulates products and give us the chance to buy it and get it into our shopping cart and bring it home. So it's just the same thing as any Apple Store, Google Play Market, and so on. No difference at all. In one case, we have IT guys who are doing this, and on the other hand, it's X5 or whatever. So people are testing yogurts and trying milk. No difference here. And if we're talking about the manufacturer of milk, the manufacturer lives in its own ecosystem. It uses its regional network to deliver those things. And just like an app in Apple Store, somebody chose it and somebody shares the revenue with it. No difference at all here. But we are talking about digital world here and now. The digital world has competition which is much more heated, because there are no limits to our possibilities. IT can create any type of project, and if it's demanded, then it's happiness. We are not restricted with the resources. Any amount of cows or grass is not going to affect it. So that is why ecosystem is a wonderful term which can describe whatever we want. Yes, I would like to add that size matters. And the relations in the ecosystem between the companies of one scale are on one level. And another one, so which have some partnership with startups. So these are different types of relationships. And the situation is as follows. If we want to say that there is a product which is complementary, or it's developing the product line of a big product chain, or it's some innovation which can be incorporated into the value chain or into client's route, we are talking about the incubation and scaling and rolling out. Because when I'm talking about VTB magnet, this is more or less equal partnership, millions of clients on one hand and millions of clients on the other hand. So the relations are going to have their own characteristics and their own rules. From the point of ecosystem, they have to be open in this regard. If we understand that this is going to have some addition to the financial services or some chain which is going to add something financial, so and let's say startup is providing for that, and we are, for example, accelerating a great amount of startups which come to us, we are gathering those, we are choosing those and working with those. There are different forms of working with companies which have not gone to the market and could not become independent yet. So once again, if we are talking about startup trying to find itself in a big ecosystem, it has to announce itself first of all. And then this potential has to be shown. Well, we are completely out of time all of a sudden, but I would like to ask the last question in this situation to all the speakers. What do you say the future of the ecosystems? What's it gonna be like? Are we going to become the clients of one particular ecosystem? We had a notion that the business is expanding and becoming bigger and bigger. So all the startups, magnets, Pericrostek, and so on, will they become parts of a big ecosystem, or will there be place for some separate players who can be competitive in these situations to compete with the big ecosystems? Okay, while I'm holding the mic, let me say a couple of words. I believe that the next step of the cooperation development is the cooperation in the field of data. We are still living in our own informational domain, each of us. We are afraid for our data, we are not sharing it. So, and of course, a lot of amount of data is simply prohibited to transfer to any third parties. That is why I believe that this rapture of this informational space is going to actually make the world more comfortable for all of us. And we're talking about the suppliers of services and the customers. I can say that the human is a rather lazy entity, but sometimes it is ready to make some efforts in order to get lazy again later. But I think that yes, if the ecosystems are going to satisfy our end-to-end demands, we are going to join in them and we will live with them for quite some time. And I can say that the data will be able to predict our movements in some point, and it will give us the chance either to if they wouldn't give us a chance to leave those ecosystems, or at least the chance would be minimum. Yes, I would like to build up on what Sergey has said. The tendency is quite clear. Of course, everything demands for the development of ecosystem, and this is the platform which allows to achieve the KPIs. But if we're talking about the markets, so which we might not see, and especially if we're talking about regulation, the ecosystem is not regulated right now. So if we take example of banking and retail, for example, every business deal on procuring some additional retail network or some regional player is actually being coordinated through the state bodies, and people are checking whether everything is okay and no breaches are provided. And of course, everything is going to be built upon the legislation, and the customer is going to be the center of it all in the end, for no monopoly to arise, which is going to actually force any services upon the customers. So, and at some point, so I don't think that ecosystems are going to be competing only because they simply eat out the pieces of the market. People are going to be competing, the ecosystems are going to be competing only by providing services to the customer. Thank you. If you don't mind, dear colleagues, I would like to build up on this. I believe that the future is going to be multifaceted. every user and the client is going to be clients of various ecosystems simultaneously. Just like any startup and small business, any separate business is going to be a participant of a range of ecosystems. Just a simple example. You have an app. You have an app for iOS and you have an app for Android. You are already a part of two ecosystems. You cannot do anything about it. And if this app is integrated on a deep level with, let's say, Rostelecom, then it means that you are a part of Rostelecom ecosystem. There won't be distinct border between this and that and the third ecosystems. They are working all together, and we all understand that each of those is going to be fighting for each customer to get a higher switching cost. For a client to think before he wants to switch between ecosystems. And in this regard, Sergey is completely right. One of such hooks, switch and cost, is going to be the set of big data about each service, about each user, which is going to allow to provide a better quality of services for the clients. And this is going to hold people inside the ecosystems. I will add a couple of words just. So, a human being is not only lazy, but it's also very controversial. So, when we will see the spiral movement, globalization, then niche products, niche players, that is why I believe that the partnership will arise. There is no stronger part, so the clients will win. Let me just sum up then. The share of the ecosystems will grow, but no ecosystem is ever going to become 100% occupying everything. New services will try to compete for a share of market, but they will eventually join various ecosystems. All of us will have a choice of various ecosystems, and a human being loves to have a choice. Being able to switch between some of those things if they are not satisfied. Let's say like clients are shifting between cell phone operators. So people understand that the difference is not that big, but at some point one of the operators is going to simply mess up so much that you are going to switch to another one. And everything is going to be based on the economic details, but we will have various ecosystems and we will be able to switch between those. Hail to the competition. Thank you very much. The time rushes so fast. Thank you very much for sharing your opinions. Dear friends, it was a great pleasure for me to find out how exactly the market is going to develop in the field of ecosystems, because let me just express my own opinion. I think that ecosystems, from the point of view of business, this is all about data. What information needs to be found in order to provide something which a person wants. From the point of view of users, this is more about comfortable, seamless transfers between services. And I do agree with the opinion that ecosystem is just like operators. More or less, everything is the same. And each year, we have to suggest something unique, which is going to be interesting to the user. And this is more and more complicated. The human being is still rather primitive. And the demands, the daily demands, are rather simple. Some things might be covered by other things than the ecosystem, some personal interests and services which are not included in the ecosystem, because it's something rare and you cannot use the data to predict those wishes, to buy something, to procure something or do something. So sometimes you cannot predict those things. I hope that the customer, the user, will win, and not the big corporations will do that. I really hope that the wishes of the clients are going to be the foundation of all the campaigns and companies. Thank you for your speeches, thank you to all the participants, and thank you to all the guests who came here to listen. I hope everybody enjoyed that and it was interesting. And everybody is going to think about what ecosystem should be used tomorrow.
При низких температурах окружающей среды тела быстро теряют энергию. Но нахождение вблизи источника тепла позволяет телу получать тепловое излучение. Происходит самопроизвольное перераспределение тепла. Следовательно, когда источники тепла находятся вместе, их энергия побеждает холод. Лучшее создается вместе. Газпромбанк.
МТС Стартап Хаб. Работа с реальным бизнес-заказчиком МТС. Доступ к ресурсам самого крупного телеком-бренда в России. Не можешь поверить? А в твой стартап обязательно поверят. У нас есть все, что тебе понадобится. Ресурсы, клиенты, технологии, каналы продаж. Мы оценим твой продукт, правильно применим в своем бизнесе и масштабируем на мировой рынок. МТС Стартап Хаб ждет тебя и твоих нереальных бизнес-идей.